Hello and welcome. The first thing that I'll draw your attention to is that this is a Ronin Dojo Pro number 14, or the Oniso model. And it looks really cool, and it's a second-hand model, and that's what I'd encourage you to keep in mind. This is a second-hand model, and it's been sharpened by the person that owned it before me. The first thing that I draw your attention to is that it fucking cuts like a goddamn demon, which is really cool. I mean, honestly, this shit cut an empty water bottle, which isn't necessarily awesome for anyone else, but for me is quite an accomplishment because I'm not very good at cutting water bottles. Look at this one. I hit it across the stand. Anyway, on this particular cut, you can see that I cut the water bottle in twain, but that part of it at least stays in the stand, which is something of, again, an accomplishment for me. I don't have to swing the sword very hard in order to get a cut. And in this one, I cut the sword, or rather cut the bottle, and then whack the stand. And you can see how awesome it is. I try to cut the bottle in two, and I'm not close enough, so it doesn't work. And then I come back to cut it in half, and I miss and hit the stand, like a true accomplished derby derper. The important thing to note is that the sword didn't deform at all. It's still very sharp. There's no edge rolling. When I move on to rolled newspapers, I mean, look at this. It cuts like a goddamn laser through this shit. And it doesn't necessarily cut all the way through, but these are 6-inch rolled newspapers. And it still makes it most of the way through, at least half of the way through, without really... the planes on the paper look super flat and sharp and clean and awesome, and that's really quite fucking cool in my opinion. It looks like there's about 1.5 inches, maybe 2 inches left of the paper before it's cut all the way through. It made it through the solid wood core, and when I whack it again, it turns into confetti. So all in all, I think that's pretty awesome. Fucking pretty goddamn awesome. Folks have asked me to wiggle around the sword a little bit to show how it moves and whatnot. Now, I think I look a bit like an asshole, but the point is that you can probably see how the sword moves. Even though it's a larger blade at about 30 inches long, it still is reasonably easy to move around and well balanced. The saya itself is in reasonably good shape for a second-hand model, but you can see some deformation around where the kurikata is, or where the sageo was tied on. There's some leftover remnants of where the sageo was tied on. Also, the other thing I'd note is that the ito is somewhat loose. Now, I've heard that this is a problem with Ronin katanas, and I haven't necessarily experienced it myself. However, this is one of the few second-hand models that I purchased with my own ducats, and I can see that the saya, or rather the ito itself, is a little bit looser than it should be for something as old as it is. The saya going on isn't necessarily bad. It's held up pretty well, and when I did a little bit of kata with it, it held up all in all in good form. The thing I feel I need to reiterate is that the ito is somewhat loose, even though it doesn't necessarily look it. You can move it around with your hand if you push, and even though the saya has some sign of tying on before the lacquer was dry, that's not necessarily uncommon. I've seen that on many other brands from Hanwei or Chines or any other manufacturer of modern production swords. The ito being a little loose is the main concern. In terms of the blade has been sharpened and is secondhand, so I can't necessarily hold any scratches or deformation against it. What I can say is that for a secondhand blade, it fucking cut like a goddamn demon and was awesome and feels really good in my hand and is one of my favorite Ronin blades, even though it's one that I paid for and didn't get for free. And you know how free stuff feels better than stuff that you pay for. This blade has to feel all that much better because it is something I actually had to pay for myself. So kudos to it. On any note, the simple fact is it's a longer blade. I like the fact that it's about 30 inches. I like how it looks. I like how it feels. And I have to give my tip of the hat to Ronin for overall the balance and performance of the blade itself. It feels really good, and that's not something that's easy to achieve. If I wrap things up, what I can say is that there's a lot of other products on the market, and for $315, not a lot of those products are 30 inches long, fit a large North American man, and feel as good as this one does. So overall, I'd say that it's a pretty solid bet, and you can't necessarily go wrong if you're looking for something in this size. Thanks for watching the video. I hope it was helpful, and I'm gonna go drink some more beer now. Cheers!